Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Hello, PR Maven Nation. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast. Episode 201 episodes, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan 65-Step Strategic Process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. And today I want to welcome my guest, Kevin Hancock, Chairman and CEO of Hancock Lumber. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, Kevin.
Thank you, Nancy. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you here. We were just saying that we probably haven't seen each other since about 2018. And time, I feel like during the pandemic was sort of warped. It's sort of a weird, there was 2 years that we were kind of all on lockdown. And it's hard to believe that it's been that long since we've seen each other.
Right, no question.
So Kevin Hancock is CEO of one of America's oldest family businesses, as well as an award-winning author and nationally recognized public speaker. Kevin is a frequent visitor to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota and an advocate for strengthening the voices of all individuals within a company or a community through listening, empowering, and shared leadership. In addition, Kevin is the founder of a nonprofit organization called the Seventh Power, dedicated to advancing economic sovereignty for Native communities across America. He is a graduate of Bowdoin College, and I'll still talk to him, even though I'm a Colby grad and Colby mom. But Bowdoin's okay, just as long as we're not talking about that other one in Lewiston. We won't mention that. And Kevin lives in Maine with his wife, Allison. Established in 1848, Hancock Lumber Company is led by its 620 employees, operating 12 lumber yards, 3 sawmills, and a truss manufacturing facility in Maine and New Hampshire. The company also grows and harvests trees sustainably on 8,000 acres of timberland. Hancock Lumber is an 8-time consecutive recipient of Best Places to Work in Maine. Congratulations. That's a big honor. The company is also a recipient of the Maine Family Business of the Year Award, the Governor's Award for Business Excellence, and the Pro Sales National Dealer Year Award. So, Kevin, that's a lot of awards to be proud of.
Well, thank you. It's it's a credit to everybody, past and present, who's been connected to our company. But as you also know, that and a couple dollars will get you coffee. You've always got to stay focused on improving, getting better, looking forward, all of that.
That's true. Yes, it's true. You can never just rest on your laurels. Sometimes people, because I've had my business now 31 years, and sometimes people say, it must be so easy. You've been doing it so long. I was like, no, it never gets easy, because there's always something new to face and deal with. COVID was an interesting challenge. And,
right.
I always have to be moving forward.
Right. Our company, by way of example, goes back to 1848. So before the Civil War, certainly that first generation of leaders of our company would have been entrepreneurial. But to your point, every generation has to be entrepreneurial, because everything's always changing, and you've constantly got to be focused on reinventing yourself and reinventing the organizations you're a part of, including, of course, a company.
That's true. That's interesting. So tell us, Kevin, about your career in the lumber industry and how you got into it in the first place.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm part of the sixth generation of my family to work for the company.
Right.
But growing up and even through college, working for the company actually never crossed my mind. I hadn't contemplated it, not negatively or positively. I just hadn't thought about it. When I graduated from college, I wanted to teach and coach, and that was the first career path I started down. And then not long after that, my dad got sick. He got cancer and died a few years later. And kind of on short notice, I changed my plans, came to work for the company, started on the front counter at our store in Yarmouth, and 31 years later, here I am.
Oh, that's interesting. Both of us started at the same time because, yeah, I've had my business since 1991. So here we are.
Right.
Well, but you had something impactful that happened with your voice in 2010. And I personally find this very interesting how you incorporated this into your leadership style and essentially your personal brand. So tell us about that, Kevin.
Sure. So in 2010, at the peak of the national housing and mortgage market collapse, which was a really stressful time on our industry, right at the peak of that, I began to have trouble speaking, and it turned out I'd acquired a rare neurological voice disorder called spasmodic dysphonia. Anyway, quite quickly back then, I had to develop a new approach to leadership that didn't involve talking. And I hadn't thought about it this way before, but as a CEO, really my voice had been my primary tool, and suddenly I couldn't use it. Anyway, when it's hard to talk, you quickly develop strategies for doing less of it. And mine was to answer a question with a question, thereby putting the responsibility for speaking right back on the other person. So in that kind of age-old scene, people would come up to me regularly at work with a question or a problem because I was the CEO or one of the bosses of the company. And prior to my voice condition, I always would have given an answer or a directive. But now I simply started saying things like, well, that is a good question. What do you think we should do about it? Putting the conversation right back with the other person. He or she would tell me what they thought, and then I would say, well, okay, let's go do that. So originally that was to protect my voice, but having had those exchanges hundreds of times, here's what struck me, Nancy, and really revolutionized the way I thought about leadership. People already knew what to do. It turned out they didn't actually need, most of the time, a top-down, management-centric directive. What they really needed was the encouragement and the safety to trust their own true voice. And that's what got me started thinking about a different approach to leadership. And I said to myself, well, maybe my own voice limitations, which I'd only ever previously thought of as a liability or quite literally a pain in the neck, maybe it was actually a gift and an invitation to lead differently in a way that strengthened the voices of others. And that got me really excited about the potential of using leadership positions to disperse power, not collect it, and to give other people a bigger, stronger voice.
Well, Kevin, I have to say, I've known you and followed your career since then, and I kind of laugh because people who know me know that I'm a talker, and I'm like, wow, maybe that would be a blessing if I had spasmodic dysphonia also, because I would spare a lot of people having to listen to me talk. But I also think it's ironic that you sort of have developed a brand as a public speaker. You've done more public speaking since then than you ever did before.
Yeah, so ironic and counterintuitive. I had to lose a bit of my physical voice in order to really find kind of my authentic, unique, spiritual voice. And since then, I've become really passionate about using the place of work to strengthen the voices of others and really try to positively impact humanity that way. I've thought a lot about how humanity advances, and I've concluded it's one human at a time, starting with the people right beside you. And I've thought a lot about this question as well, Nancy. What if, this theoretical question, what if everybody on Earth, all 7 billion people, what if everybody felt trusted, respected, valued, heard, and safe? What might change? I think everything would change.
I love that. That's just a really awesome concept. And how could we make that happen? That would be remarkable.
Yeah, and I think it's actually surprisingly simple. We need to think about leadership differently. Leadership really in the 21st century needs to be about dispersing power. It needs to be about giving other people a stronger voice. And to do that, you've got to make it safe for people to say what they actually think and to be comfortable as their authentic self. I say all the time at our company to everyone who will listen, I really treat everybody this way. Nothing has to change for you to be amazing. Nothing has to change for you to be amazing. But leadership does have to change, and it really starts with listening. Before my voice condition, upon reflection, I realized I was listening at work most of the time to judge what I heard, whether or not I agreed with it or didn't. Today, what I really like to try to do and encourage is to say that listening is for understanding, not judgment. When someone in a huddle at Hancock Lumber shares a perspective, what we really want the response to be is simply, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being willing to say what you actually think. And it's getting over this idea of someone else's idea has to be validated by management as being right or wrong. We have about 650 people who work at our company, and every one of those perspectives is a true and accurate perspective of what Hancock Lumber actually is. There is no single truth about our company. It's only has life through the eyes of the people who work there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and actually, we had a conversation earlier today with Amber Lamke from Maine Grains in Skowhegan, and we were talking about how each employee that you hire becomes the face of the brand to the customers that they're dealing with. So the onus is on the company really to imbue the brand values and to enable those employees to deliver on the company promises to the customers that they're dealing with. And so essentially each employee becomes a brand ambassador.
I totally agree with that. A company is what the people who work there actually do. You can say what you want to say about who you are, but your brand ultimately is about what actually happens minute to minute during the operation of a company. And that's given life ultimately by the people who work there.
Right, exactly. And if they feel empowered, as you're talking about, and appreciated and fulfilled by their job, they're going to, that spirit will resonate in all of their interactions.
Right. That's totally the focus we've taken. Gallup polls will tell us that nationally, engagement at work runs about 33%, meaning 2 out of 3 Americans do not find their work meaningful, personally fulfilling, helping them grow, develop. It's only an economic exercise. And in the 21st century, that's just totally unacceptable, totally unnecessary. Work should be meaningful to the people who do it. And all you've got to do to make that happen is prioritize the people at work. I like to say pretty much every company gets whatever they prioritize. If you want employees to have an amazing experience, all you've got to do is make that a priority. And we literally have changed the mission of our company to become what I like to talk about as employee centric. Our company has lots of missions, but the first one is to make work meaningful for the people who do it. The people who work at the company are our first priority. And our belief is if the humans at work are thriving, the customers and the company itself are going to soar on the wings of thriving humans.
I agree, absolutely. And I'm just thinking about also as a customer, when I go into a business, well, of course, again, I like to talk to people, and I'm curious about the people who are at the counter of a business. So I like to ask them questions about themselves and engage in conversation. And I think if getting back to our prior conversation about how we could change the world, I think each of us, if we honor the person we're speaking with by showing an interest in who they are as people, and not just treating them like, oh, you're just the person at the coffee shop or the person at the grocery store, but instead, you're a very interesting person, and I'd like to know more about you. Now, I have 2 sons in their 20s, and they wish that I would just stop talking to all the people, but I can't help myself because I'm just curious about people, and I like to engage with them. But I think what I try to do is treat every person that I deal with as an interesting person with an interesting story, and I hope that ends up making them feel better about themselves.
Right. What I love about what you just described there is you're impacting the world around you in a positive way by virtue of how you're engaging it.
Right, exactly.
And that's also a topic I've really become attached to. I really love that iconic thought and quote of Gandhi's: become the change you wish to see in the world. And I've really come to believe that we're all leaders. We all impact the world around us. And to create change, we've got to focus on becoming what it is we'd like to see. If you'd like to see a kinder, more compassionate world, then model that, mentor that, create that.
Exactly.
Just like you do as you move around in your world, in your life, in your day.
Yeah. And of course, as parents, I think we have the opportunity to really, make an impact on our own children by honoring and respecting them and their opinions as well. I'm sure you've done that with your children.
Right, I have. I wish I'd lost my voice earlier in life because it helped me see the world through completely different eyes, and to really realize too that we have two wonderful daughters who are young adults. But really now when I think about parenting, a child really never belongs to a parent. A
Right.
parent is signing up to serve and honor that child, helping him or her come into their authentic self. I've thought a lot about the very purpose or meaning of a human life on Earth, and concluded to myself that perhaps it's to self-actualize. That maybe the one thing all humans have in common is we're just here doing the best we can in a very influential society with all kinds of pressures to think a certain way or be a certain way. We're all really just trying to individuate, to come into our own true, authentic voice. There'll never, ever be in the history of humanity another Nancy Marshall.
Somebody would say, thank goodness.
Right? But that's true for every human.
Right.
Every human is a never to be repeated iteration of humanity. And I think historically leaders have tried to mold or control individuals. And I really think in the 21st century, leadership needs to be about releasing self-actualization and simply meeting people where they are as they are.
Yeah. Well, I have to say something personal. My mother passed recently, and she loved children, and she was a preschool teacher and a swimming instructor, and she definitely modeled what we're talking about. She would honor each child, and the children could tell. Everybody called her Oma, and children could tell that she just emanated love and respect and interest and concern and all the qualities. There was a lot of children that she impacted over the years through swimming lessons and preschool, and then volunteering in my kids' schools. And I really have been thinking a lot about her legacy, as you said, because she died at age 88 just a month ago. And it's like, I think we all should be a little more like Oma in how we treat children, honoring these little souls on our earth, because that's our future.
Right. You mentioned in the introduction, I spent a lot of time on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. I've been there over 24 times in the last 10 years. And my real connection there, or affinity for them with respect to this story, is at Pine Ridge, I encountered an entire community that felt as if their authentic voice had been pushed to the side, an entire community that didn't feel really heard, authentically heard. And that helped me realize there are lots of ways for humans to lose a piece of their voice, their authenticity in this world. But back to children at Pine Ridge, there's a Lakota saying or phrase for child, and it's Watkan Yeja, which means holy one. The word for child is holy one. And I just love that. The point is that every child is sacred and holy. Now, we intuitively know that when we look at a newborn.
Right.
What a miracle.
Yeah.
But here's to me, the extrapolation back again to our topic. If every child is sacred and holy, then every adult is sacred and holy. But in our institutions, like the place of work, are we treating every adult at work as sacred and holy?
Are we removing their holiness?
Yes.
Through schools and institutions?
Correct. Correct. I think we've really got to revisit the core assumptions about institutions and their higher purpose. I've really thought about this with respect to a company. For a long time, people would say the highest purpose of a company is to produce an economic result.
Right.
I don't believe that's true anymore. I think a company being profitable is very, very important, but it's not the highest mission. I've come to think about the profitability of our company as a really cool outcome of a higher calling. The higher calling is to honor everybody at work. When you honor everybody at work, it's pretty much guaranteed they're going to collectively produce exceptional results. But what that really is about is the company soaring on the wings of thriving humans at work. And the profit is the outcome, not the goal.
Right.
An outcome, not the goal.
Well, one thing that has given me tremendous pleasure throughout my career has been mentoring younger employees. And I feel like I learned a lot of lessons about my craft and my profession when I was in my 20s. And now I just really enjoy sharing that with younger people and then seeing them implement strategies and tactics and helping our clients. That just gives me such great joy.
Right. I can tell just listening to you describe that. And I love that. That's really using your position of leadership, not to collect power, but to help make others feel more powerful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's perhaps, will someday hopefully be my greatest legacy. So but what you talk about is, the power of listening, and you have made that so much a part of your personal brand and also your volunteer work, and the books. We'll talk about your books, but I feel like you're such a great example of exactly what the PR Maven podcast is about, which is the power of building a personal brand and how that can integrate into a company or organizational brand. So tell us about the books and why you have written them and where they are and how people can get them.
Sure. So in the last 7 years, I've written 3 books. The first one's titled Not for Sale, Finding Center in the Land of Crazy Horse. And that book chronicled my first 6 trips from Maine, Hancock lumber, out to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and back.
In South Dakota.
Really, yes, really, I was on a bit of a modern day vision quest to regain my voice. I talk about it literally with the voice disorder, but it really, for me, was a spiritual finding of my authentic voice. So that's book number 1. And then my second book is titled The 7th Power, One CEO's Journey into the Business of Shared Leadership. And in that book, I take a bit of an actual world tour. The book starts on the Navajo Reservation in Arizona. It ends up in Kiev, Ukraine, actually, in 2017. And it's really a quest to uncover a new approach to leadership that disperses power instead of collects it. And then finally, my most recent book is titled 48 Whispers. And it's a photography book, images from Pine Ridge and the Northern Plains, along with 48 short meditations. It's really a book designed to help us all see the power, the sacred power that lives within us. All those books are available on Amazon and BarnesandNobles.com, as well as my own website, the business of shared leadership.com.
Okay, that's great. Well, I haven't looked at that website yet, but I'm going to definitely look at that. That's businessofsharedleadership.com.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to continue our conversation in just a moment. But now I just want to remind our listeners that my latest book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, which you might get a copy of in the mail, just saying, but you can download it at prmaven.com/giveaway. And now we're going to hear from Mike Duguay at Thomas College about PR Maven Nation.
After reading PR Works, I really started to think about how marketing actually works. And I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but what I realize is that each platform nowadays that we use out there in digital media and social media has its own nuance and also quirks to it. And understanding how they're used is exceedingly important. Because when you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. And you can't approach it that way in marketing. And that's where I think Nancy's brilliance really shined in PR Works. I think Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand is really sort of the manifesto of understanding that there's many different levels to marketing. It's on your personal side of your brand, how actually you express yourself through business, but also what people hear you saying and what they see out there in the public eye as well. So I think what's really important there, that's really the blueprint of how you go about using these new social media platforms, but also to express who you are as a human being. Because people want to see you authentically and genuinely working with not only what you do, but also with the customers. And Nancy, on a personal level, I think that's who she is. She embodies that approach.
Welcome back to the PR Maven Podcast, and we're talking today with Kevin Hancock. The PR Maven Podcast is also available on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we welcome all of our listeners and viewers. So Kevin, this is a podcast about public relations, and how has your speaking, writing, and involvement with the reservation in South Dakota played a role in the PR for your company?
Well, that's a great question. It's played a big role, but that wasn't the intention of it. It was more of an outcome. When I really started spending time on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and learned the history of the genocide and the conquering that they were subjected to for over a century, and saw firsthand what the poorest place in America looks like. It wasn't okay. It didn't sit well with me right in the middle of our country. And really, when I thought about it, it was a case of leadership overreaching. Those that had the most power, in this case at that time, white America, abused that power with pretty much every Native community in this country. And I thought historically, the winning of the West in the second half of the 19th century was a historical event. And while it is, on one hand, the ramifications of what was done are still playing out, those wounds have not yet healed. And again, this really got me thinking about leadership. And I concluded that those with the most power often abuse it. They go too far, and overreaching has consequences. It ultimately collapses back upon the people who do it. And so I started really thinking about writing about it, trying to practice an alternative model, which was about leadership restraint, which to me is having the power, but not using it.
Or abusing it, perhaps.
Or abusing it.
Right, exactly. I like that. Yeah, and obviously throughout history, we've seen so many examples. I mean, Hitler is the one who comes to mind. People who have just gotten so carried away with themselves and caused so much harm and horrible
Right.
atrocities.
Right. No,
in
exactly.
our
So,
history.
yeah, with my own voice condition, I really developed an unexpected but irresistible affinity with communities that didn't feel like they had a voice, whether that was a remote, disenfranchised Indian reservation in the Dakotas or people at work. Throughout history, lots of people at work have felt like they haven't had a voice, an equal, powerful voice. And so the idea of trying to create a very different work culture that strengthened voices versus directed and controlled them just became a kind of an irresistible passion of mine. And because I had the good fortune of being the CEO of a company, I had the chance to not just contemplate this or write about it, but to actually do it. And we've been in pursuit of that model for a decade now. And the performance of our company just took off, honestly, beyond my wildest expectations. But again, that was the outcome of a higher calling. What was ironic there is the company took off when we stopped putting the company first. The company took off when we started putting the people who work at the company first.
Well, Kevin, as I'm listening to you today and knowing the great shortage of employees that is impacting so many companies, I almost feel like you have the seed of what could be the future for so many businesses. I mean, have you experienced a shortage of employees at Hancock Lumber? Has that impacted you?
So Jonathan Muzzy, who does the hiring and onboarding for our retail stores, said it best a while back. He was talking to a group in our office and he said, we've decided to skip the Great American Resignation. We're just not going to participate. We're gonna be fully staffed. We're gonna have longevity. We're gonna have low turnover. And yeah, I mean, this economy is a challenge for everybody, but we have very few openings, and we've not had much difficulty fully staffing the company.
Congratulations. And I just feel that so many leaders in business can learn from your model. And I just think it's fascinating how your personal brand emerged from your spasmodic dysphonia condition and how you've developed these brands in parallel, basically the personal brand and then the business of sharedleadership.com, along with Hancock Lumber and the brand there. And your brand is part of the Hancock Lumber brand, but you also have this distinct and separate brand as well. So how do you think about that in your head? Are you thinking of a strategy for each brand separately, or how do you think about that?
It was really just an authentic manifestation of how I came to see the whole world. Disperse power, strengthen the voices of others, help everyone feel trusted, respected, valued, and heard, and just live that, keep trying to live those values. It was really easy for me to, has been really easy for me to push that agenda because I'm all in on it. And the consistency, of course, right, of an agenda always makes a huge difference. Like I bet everybody at Hancock Lumber who knows me would tell you that those priorities are not ever going to change for Kevin Hancock. And it's really such a simple idea to focus on. The old leadership model of hoarding power and controlling others, that's actually hard to do. That takes lots of rules, that takes lots of systems, that creates lots of resistance. The model of letting go is easy. It's natural. And if I might, I thought about why this is true. I had a bit of an epiphany one evening in the desert on the Navajo reservation in Arizona, where 5 words plopped into my head. And those words were simply this: in nature, power is dispersed. And I froze in my tracks when that thought came to me. And I looked around, you would have chuckled. Anyone might have chuckled. I had an out loud conversation alone with the desert at that moment. I said to the desert as the sun was setting, I said, where's your capital? Where's your headquarters? Where's your corporate governing center? Where are all the managers, supervisors, and executives that make this desert run? I actually pointed at a stand of cactus and I said, which one of you is in charge of all the other cactuses? And the answer to every question was just self-evident, that wonderful secret sauce power of nature is scattered and diffused. It lives in all its pieces, big and small. And humans who are a part of nature, not detached from it, ultimately aspire to organize in that same way. That is our natural order. This long-standing tradition of leaders collecting power and dominating others, that's not a natural order. And it might have worked during the Industrial Revolution or the Middle Ages, but it's not going to cut it in the 21st century. And you see people at work manifesting that today. They're just plain not gonna stay and work at places that don't serve them. And I love that. I really love to see that awakening unfolding.
Yeah, and it's going to be obvious which businesses do honor the individuals and which don't, because the ones that do will be fully staffed and they'll be successful. And I feel sorry for the ones that don't. As you're talking, I'm just thinking back through my own education and upbringing and the teachers that I've had and professors in college and the ones who would recognize and honor me as an individual and how much more I thrived in those classes than the ones that would kind of try to make me just like everybody else. And yeah, it's so apparent. I can think of the individual teachers that kind of got me and took the time and energy to acknowledge my own personality and my own strengths. And it goes back to the fact that in our own personal development, I think we're much better off focusing on our superpowers and trying to grow those rather than focusing on our weaknesses. I'm not really that good at accounting, for example. And, I could focus all of my energy on trying to learn accounting, but why bother? There's a lot of people who love accounting, who are very happy to help me with accounting. But why not focus on, this thought leadership and this content marketing that I'm doing, this podcast that I love, and, to differentiate myself. So I think that, again, getting back to the whole personal branding, if each person can have parents and mentors and teachers who will help them uncover what makes them special and what is their superpower and develop that, I think that would lead to a much happier world.
Right. Tell me what you think of this, because I know you think more about this topic than I do. But when I think about personal branding, I think the first step is finding your authentic self. That step requires giving up on what the rest of the world expects of me and really listening to your own inner voice. Then, once you know your own truth and you know it's authentic, then you can think about, how do I live, share, and spread that message? In other words, for me, what happened first was I got lost in this calling of voice, and I sought for me the truth in it. And that was just organic, authentic introspection. But then I said, all right, I want to spread this. And that's when I really started to think about how you take an idea and spread it.
Well, I mean, I started this podcast in 2018 on the whole premise of developing a personal brand and using that in public relations. And I feel like with social media too, we can all express ourselves on the internet and be findable, so that other people who are interested in the same things, you can create a community worldwide. I mean, it has no boundaries. There's no geographic constraints. And, you know, you and I live up here in Maine, which is somewhat isolated from the rest of the world, but we both, I'm sure, have a network that's worldwide. I love seeing, for example, that we have listeners of this podcast in so many countries. And again, because of the power of technology, I can look and see, you know, oh, where do I have listeners? And to me, that is just so exciting, you know, that I can share my thoughts and that there are people who are interested and who are listening. So I'm so grateful for the internet and the power of technology that to bring us together. Now, of course, there's another side. There's sort of the destructive side of technology, and there's people who are bullying others and bringing others down. And I despise those internet bullies. And actually, I've experienced that online as well in my life and career. And there was a terrible time when I was being bullied. That's for another time. But I think what we've discovered, or what we've talked about today, is really worthy of continuing to explore. And I'm so grateful. Now, I just have to ask you a question. Like, we've been talking for about, 40 minutes now.
Yeah.
Are you going to have to rest your voice for the rest of the day?
No, I should have spoke to that earlier. I, for the first 5 years or so after I acquired the disorder, I would not have been able to come on your show because I couldn't have done it. But over time, I ended up essentially recovering from what was diagnosed as an incurable disorder. Now, when I say recover, what do I mean by that? My voice still sounds very unique and a bit funky, but with no pain, I can say whatever I want to say. I can express myself, and everybody hears me. So I took a disorder that is medically considered to be incurable, and not only for me cured it, but turned it into a blessing. I had a dream, powerful dream not too long ago, where a bit of an angel offered to back me up to the year 2008 before my voice condition. And in that dream, I panicked and I said, no to the angel. If we back up that far, I might not get spasmodic dysphonia again. So that negative event transformed my life in so many positive ways. And that's why I think too, when difficult things happen to us, it's tough to see the good of them in the moment.
Right.
But if we give it time, if we hang in there, if we reflect, those moments of difficulty can often become our defining moments of growth. The Sioux have a saying that essentially means this: that the seeker, the vision quester, gets the vision he or she is ready for.
Right.
And that everything that happens to you is happening to you for a reason, and embedded in it, there's opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Isn't there a Chinese saying about behind every crisis is an opportunity? There's a symbol for that. So Kevin, is there a book, an app, or a website that has impacted you personally and professionally, and how?
I'm sure there are, but I would say just learning to listen differently has been the biggest impact. And for me now, everywhere I turn, I'm hearing things in a different way that impact me. To pick out one writer, one book, I don't think I could do that, because I've really been impacted as strongly by the people right around me that I work with at Hancock Lumber, or in my community, or in my family. There's impact, uplifting impact surrounding us. And I just woke up a bit one day and was able to see that.
Well, Kevin, we're going to wrap up now, but how can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up with you?
So right on my website, the business of sharedleadership.com, you can email me directly, and I answer everybody. I reach back out to everybody that reaches out to me.
That's amazing. And again, that goes back to honoring each individual human in your world, and what that does for them is immeasurable also. Well, Kevin, this has been far beyond my wildest dreams of a conversation. I just loved it, and I'm sure that our listeners loved it. And I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation today. And I can't wait to share it with everybody in PR Maven Nation. So thank you for joining me.
It was a joy to be with you. I loved it. Thank you.
I'm going to cry now. Have a great day, PR Maven Nation. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.